Welcome to the next episode of Last One Standing, and I'm joined by Chloe Sangster this week, who, for those who don't know, Chloe smashed the West Highland Way, which is 96 miles ultra following the West Highland Way, funny enough. So I got Chloe on this week just so I could ask her the question, what were the main problems that you thought were going to come up on the West Highland Way, A, beforehand, and B, what were the problems that came up during the run itself?
Thank you, James. Good question. I think beforehand for me, there was a lot of questions going around my head because it was a race, a distance I'd never raced before. I'd only ever done 50 miles. So for me, after the sort of 8 hour mark, it was quite an unknown territory, which was a little bit daunting in my head. So a big one for me before the race was kind of mentally preparing myself. Just so I was going in feeling quite sort of strong and confident rather than doubting myself, oh, can I go past that 8 hour mark? I also met with my coach, Meryl, who has been amazing throughout this training block. I started with her in February and yeah, she's been great. So she met me the week running up to the race. And we basically spent about 2 hours going through sort of processes that I have or I can control. And I've actually got the list written here. It's all the things I went through with her. So the first one was I always start races too fast, which is really easy to do. You know, if you go into a race excited, full of adrenaline, it's so easy to just go off too quick. And that's something I do all the time.
But it's not just you. I think that's pretty much the majority of every runner out there. And I think that
yeah,
that's a common thing for everyone.
Yeah, totally. And I think for that distance, you know, I just couldn't do that. You know, it wasn't going to be possible. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lasted till probably halfway and I'd then crash. So for me, it was just remembering to start slow. And Meryl gave me a very good piece of advice. She says, if you start and it feels easy, go even easier. And I did stick to that. And I told myself
I want sticking to that. How did it feel like, when you're going easy and you're thinking, I'm buzzing for this race, adrenaline's flowing, I want to get crack in. What made you or what helped you to go slower? Also, Meryl's got a wealth of experience and advice there. Did that help you for that start?
Yeah, that definitely did help. I just knew I had in my head I wanted to get to the halfway point and still feel strong. I didn't want to get to the 50-mile mark and feel like I cannot go anymore. I wanted to get to that point and feel like, no, I'm feeling good. I've paced this well and I'm going to continue to do so. And I do feel like I got to that point at the halfway mark where I did feel strong and I felt like, no, I can do this. I've got this. So again, that's a bit more of a mental sort of confidence boost already. Another thing for me as well, it sounds really bizarre, but we start at 1 a.m. I'm not sure what time your race starts. What is it, in the morning or?
We're bang on noon, 12 o'clock
Okay.
noon. Yeah.
And this was actually, again, this is all info coming from other people, but this is why things like this is brilliant because you can gather sort of tips and hints from other people. So this is from Claire Dunn, who was my support crew. And she said, because my race started at 1 a.m., obviously through the night, again, I hadn't done that before. I work night shift, so I was fairly confident that I could sort of handle being up and on the go through the night, but it was still something I had never done before. So she suggested just trying to switch off as much as possible and just remind yourself it's sleepy time. So I started thinking to myself, how can I run and tell myself it's sleepy time? But in actual fact, it worked a treat. I just started running and just switched my brain off. So I didn't really allow myself to think of too much. I didn't overthink anything. And the way I would describe it is I felt like I was meditating while running and my mind was totally switched off. And I just allowed myself to be like that until 4:30 in the morning, which was my very first checkpoint.
Did you practice it?
What was that?
Did you practice like that whole sleepy time or the meditation type thing
In
before?
all honesty, no.
No.
Had I maybe practiced like running through the night, then I would have possibly done. But this was just a conversation that we had on the way down to the race. It was such a last minute thing. But I thought, you know what? If that's something that may benefit my race, then I'm absolutely going to try it. And hey, if it doesn't work, then I'll just stop. But I found myself, the more I reminded myself, this is sleepy time, I wasn't overthinking. I just kind of switched off and just put one foot in front of the other until I got to 4:30. I then allowed myself, right, this is my first checkpoint. It's breakfast time. It's now time to wake up. I can start thinking a little more.
So did you kind of like have your same feeds at the same times you would normally? Like
I,
breakfast at breakfast time, supper at supper time, lunch at lunchtime kind of thing, or did you
yeah,
just everybody
I
could do?
tried to keep it like that. So that was my initial plan pre-race, was to try and almost treat it as if it was a normal day. I know that sounds a bit ridiculous because not, I don't run 96.5 miles on a normal day, but in terms of meals, my plan was to have breakfast, a normal sort of breakfast around 4:35. Okay, it's a wee bit earlier than what I would normally do. And then yeah, lunch, a normal sort of lunch, pasta, sandwiches. I can go through that in a wee bit. And then dinner. I would say it worked fairly well for the breakfast and lunch. However, come dinner time, I was really struggling to eat. But bear in mind that was getting towards the, high mileage and high sort of elevation point. And it was just a bit of a struggle to take on foods at that point.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads on to if the problem is getting the foods on, how did you approach that, or what kind of strategies did you use?
So
High mileage or that high altitude type?
yeah, I mean, one thing, if I were to look back and maybe change, it would be to not take on gels so early on in the race. Um, Even though I was eating every hour and I was eating roughly 90 to 120 um carbs per hour, I would probably, looking back, probably not take on as much gels so early on and rather save it for later on in the race.
It's like firmer foods earlier and then more
Yeah,
liquidy food.
I was still taking on solids from the get-go. Basically, I had a sandwich an hour before I started, and then I just kept on eating every hour from then, well, every half hour within the race. But gels were also included within that solid foods. And I think looking back, I probably should have maybe just stuck to solids only for at least, I don't know, the first quarter, the first half, and then go on to gels, purely because I found after like halfway point, it was getting harder and harder to eat as the day went on. But equally, because I'd also had gels all day, I was then getting sick of gels and tailwind.
Yeah.
So then it became a bit of a struggle to take on, anything. So that is something that I would suggest. I mean, in my plan, it was always to have gels from the get go, from the start. But I think looking back, I would maybe change that.
How many gels did you consume in total?
And I don't actually have it written down, to be honest. So I was taking on a gel per hour, which doesn't sound much, but I was also having solid foods on top of that.
Yeah.
Usually I take on like 2, 3 gels an hour, but that's if I'm only fueling with gels. But I was
Yeah.
trying to take on, more solids than gels. But I even found taking on 1 gel per hour was getting too much, like it was just sickly.
What did you use? Did you use Torque or did you use?
Yeah, I use Torque, which in all honesty, out of all the gels that I've tried, Torque has been the only ones that have sort of agreed with my stomach.
Yeah.
And I don't really get much stomach issues at all. So for me, it was, that was definitely what I was going to be using on race day, was Torque.
What's your favorite flavor?
I think raspberry ripple has got to be my favorite flavor. So good.
They are good. I made the mistake of buying all the same flavor.
Oh no,
I think it was Meryl just goes, why'd you do that? Get all the different flavors. At
get
least
the
like
mix.
you've got a bit of option when you do like taste them. So yeah, I made that
What's
mistake.
your what's your like food slash gel plan for Last Man Standing?
Yeah, definitely in the process of doing it. Dave Andrews shared his 24-hour one, and
Hmm.
there's a few different things on there that I hadn't really thought about. But I'm going to try and maybe structure it around about the same kind of way as he did. A lot of like solid foods at the start, a gel an hour. Because of the way the race is, I'm trying to decide whether I'm probably going to take food with me on the way around, but I'm going to try and eat a lot of my solid foods at the tent, and then
Yeah.
I'll have the gel when I'm out. So I'll probably have my solid food at at the house or at the tent or at the gazebo, and then I'm going to have the gel halfway around. So I'm kind of splitting it between the two.
Yeah.
And he also said about carrying like your tailwind, or he uses active route, and he was saying that that's bonus calories. Don't count them as your main calories. So
Yeah.
anything you take on board from like tailwind or active routes, it's going to be bonus. To be honest, I haven't got a full on. I must eat this every hour, but I'm going to try and get the same amount of carbohydrates you mentioned there. But I'm also going to try and get quite a bit of fat
Yeah.
in, because the pace I'm running at is going to be quite slow, and it's going to be a lot of walking as well.
Yeah.
So having the carb there and not really burn the carb, I'm probably going to have some fat and the carbohydrate as well. So I'm going to have like what worked well at the 12-hour ultra was butt trays and just a bit more dense food that I can have in smaller bits, and
Definitely.
such a wide variety. But again, that struggle with taking food on board, I came across that already as well, and it's like we've got all this food prepared for you that's all solid, and you've got no liquids with you. You're like, oh god, what do I eat? And it came down to the whole thing of just eating like Coke, coffee, and it's like that can't sustain you. So it's got to think about what else can you do. So I think I went too early with my gels on that 12-hour ultra as well. So by the third hour, I was like, can't take any more gel. So that kind of ruined that for me. But I need to sit down and think about, because the other thing as well is that there's no real end point. So I don't really know how to stretch out over the day. So I'm definitely, one of the things that I picked up was eat a lot beforehand, because I'm not running fast. So eat well in the morning of, have a good breakfast, have a variety of food at the gazebo. I found it really, really small bite size, like bits of butt tray, bits of pork pie, bits of like Haribo sweets. So like a mixture around about that.
Yeah.
But also a bit of a stick in the spokes is Dave was using beetroot juice, which I've never used before. So I'm already thinking, well, do I need to have beetroot juice? And then I'm thinking, well, will that make a big difference to my system? Will I try it on the day? Will I try it beforehand? I've probably got to try it beforehand.
Yeah.
See how my stomach reacts to Gaviscon as well, having some Gaviscon at hand.
I would say like one thing for me, certainly later on in the race, was an absolute winner was MASH. Now, I had only taken on MASH once before, but I took with me, it got recommended as something, easy to eat. I think, was it my last checkpoint or second last checkpoint, really struggling to take on any sort of food, and Claire and Dave were basically shoving MASH down my throat, and it was actually, so easy to eat. And 5 minutes later, it just gave me that sort of boost to get going again.
Just MASH on its own?
Yeah, MASH, a good chunk of butter, a little bit of milk. I mean, we were fortunate enough to have the van, so I even got it heated up. But hey, like, if you can just get cold MASH down you, I guess it's better than nothing at all.
Because Dave Moore had mentioned about you can buy like a tin of, I think it was boiled potatoes, he said. And he found that he just opened the tin, empty out the water, and just like start eating potatoes as well. So the potatoes been mentioned a few times, and that is on the list of things to have. But I've also been trying out like having a couple of potatoes and going for a run. But then your body's not in the same position as what it would be when you're fatigued. But at the same time, at least you can stomach it.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I did do quite a lot in training, actually, was maybe go out, do a 10K, come home, have a big bowl of porridge, banana, honey, cocoa powder. That was always my breakfast on race day, and then go straight back out on a full stomach, and just kind of train my body to run on a full stomach. And I think it did help. I got no stomach issues really at all throughout the whole race, which I thought was quite good going.
Blessing, absolute blessing.
Yeah.
Because if it behaves itself, then it means you can focus on everything else.
Yeah, definitely.
What other things do you come across? So the fueling, obviously the struggle to get the solid fuel in. What other things, obviously running for the length of time you did, 8 hours was the longest run that you said you'd done before. And what happened as soon as you went over 8 hours?
So bizarrely, when the 8 hours hit, I paid no attention to it. So that is a bonus because I did think I'd be a bit sort of fixated on this whole 50 miles, 8 hours mark. But it wasn't until I got to 100k and myself and Paul Anderson got a photo at the top of Jelly Baby Hill with a flag. And I remember thinking, oh, I actually feel good. I'm at 100k, my body's feeling good. After that, it was a little bit of a slog. Just the route, it just felt like it went on and on. Hadn't seen Claire and Dave for a wee while. So I feel like it was after that I then began to struggle a little bit mentally and physically. And that's when it became a bit of a battle to do things like eat and even focus. I was getting to Claire and Dave, and the best way I can describe it is this is further on. I think I was at 130k, but I just felt drunk. I was starting to hallucinate a little bit. My sugar levels were obviously dropping too low. And they could see it straight away. I was also soaked right through to the skin. The weather on the first half of the race was pretty good, but over the second half it started raining and it was really windy. So even with my waterproof on, I was still sort of soaked down the back of my neck. I had shorts on. I was in a bit of a predicament. Do I change into sort of leggings or my long waterproofs? But I was comfortable in shorts, and for me, I would just rather have that comfort. It did mean getting wet, so that meant a change of clothes at the next checkpoint. So that was 130k in. I started hallucinating a little bit, which I've never experienced before.
What was that like?
Claire and Dave actually warned me about it and said it could happen, and I kind of just was a bit blasé about it. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I never experienced it, so it was our first time. And I started seeing what I thought was a crazy lady, like dressed in green leaves, flapping her arms at me, like it was mental. So I mean, I look back and laugh at it now, but at the time I was a little bit freaked out. So they saw it straight away. I think they saw all the signs. Like I say, the best way I can describe it is I just felt a little bit drunk, like dizzy, felt a bit sick. So I'm not wasted, that's the wrong word to use, but I spent longer at this checkpoint than what I had planned. But in the long run, that helped because it meant I was going out on the last section a little bit fresher, had a change of clothes, and then managed to get food down me, which was the sort of main aim. That is probably the last two checkpoints is probably the only time I sort of encountered problems, if you like. So that would be 112k in and 130k in. And it was just things like, cold from getting wet. So I think I had 4 changes of clothes throughout the day, which isn't too bad. And in fact, I kept my shoes and my socks on for the whole race. I didn't change them at all. I was comfy. Yes, they were wet, but I could deal with the wet. It wasn't causing me any blisters or any pain. So I just kept them on. My shorts I kept on for a majority until the last checkpoint, but 4 changes of tops and waterproofs as well.
Just for
but in all honesty, what was that?
Just keep you warm more than anything else, or
basically, because I got into that second last checkpoint. Like I say, I was cold. Claire and Dave could sort of see the signs. I was obviously my sugar levels were low. I started sort of seeing things, and I felt a little bit dizzy and sick, and so they took me into the van. This is the first checkpoint, and I actually sat down as well. So that's another thing in my sort of pre-plan was to never sit down and just stay on my feet and keep walking. But I guess that's a prime example of like not everything can always go to 100% to plan, and you may need to change things last minute. And I was totally okay with that because I realized that, if I didn't sit down and I didn't spend maybe an extra 10 minutes more than what I had planned, then I might not have made it to the finish line. So yes, I did lose a little bit of time there because I think I spent in total about 15-20 minutes at that checkpoint by the time I got changed and decent food down me. At the end of the day, it then got me to the finish line.
Yeah, it's a cracking point, is that the plan, it's like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, everyone's got a plan until you come across a stumbling block. And it's, I think Don Vasey was saying when I did a bit of work with Don before when I think it was a Dava way or the morning, I can't remember. But he was saying that it's knowing that you have a plan A, but then knowing that plan B is no different than plan A, just a different way of getting to the end. And then plan C is still another way that you've got to have options if something comes up. And like you say, what if you didn't take the 10 minutes to get the fuel in, or to get warm, or to have a seat down? And although it says in the plan not to sit down, it's probably one of the things that help get you to the end.
Definitely.
I think it's been able to be quite, like, not mature is not probably the word, but being quite sensible and knowing that, okay, I can change my plan, because
Yeah.
this plan is still going to get me to the end.
100%. Because also at that point, so it's the second last checkpoint, and I carried a little sheet of paper that had all my splits to get me my A goal. I didn't bother carrying my B or my C goal. I just had this A goal that I wanted to get, and I was fairly determined to get it. But I remember looking down at it and realizing, right, I don't think I'm making this because I'm spending too much time here. But I just put it away and thought, well, do you know what? I'd rather spend the time here, spend that bit more time to get it right, and then get to the finish line and not make any goal at all.
Was that you that made that choice, or was that Dave and Claire?
Which choice to not?
Like, you're looking at your time thinking, I'm spending too long here, but you also know that you can't, or you can't leave there because you're not ready to leave there. Was that kind of like a collective, or was that you saying that, or was that kind
Nothing. So nothing was said or discussed. Dave at a few checkpoints sort of said, right, Chloe, you're doing well for time, so keep going, or try and speed up here. But I think at that point, no one, not like we said nothing to each other about my goal. It was just a case of they knew that I needed food in me, I needed a change of clothes. I also knew that I potentially might not make this goal, but I just wanted to listen to them. I knew they knew what they were doing. I wasn't going to argue it, and I just had to accept that this is going to help me get to the finish line, and it did, and it actually got me my A goal in the end. So, even if you think it's maybe not going to plan, that can also change, and you can quickly be back on track to your plan.
Yeah.
Another thing I kind of always keep in mind is if things don't go to plan, then accept it, fix it, and move on. Like, just don't waste time dwelling on it and thinking, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think as well, when you're coming off of like 120, 130 kilometers, and you've mentioned that you have been hallucinating, you've then got to kind of trust the people around about you that they'll make
100%.
the best choice for you, because you might not be able to be making that right choice.
Yeah, no,
That's
definitely.
quite cool. Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely.
I'm just looking through my wee list. Like I say, I wrote this. This is kind of like processes that I could control, if you like,
Yeah,
or at least try to. Another one, I didn't experience this because we were, well, I say fortunate with the weather. We were definitely fortunate in the first half. It was quite mild. Certainly through the night, it was great. I just ran in a base layer. The temperatures were good. It wasn't too cold. It wasn't too hot. But obviously, I had to plan for if it was going to be absolutely roasting or equally really, really cold. Because I did the Ultra X, which was in May, and I think that was it was only like 20 degrees, but I found it really hot. And I guess I just wasn't really prepared for the heat. It was also the first day this year that I'd ran in that sort of heat over that distance. And I absolutely loved the race. But one thing that put a bit of a dampener on it was just the heat. I just kept overheating. So I was then having to slow down. So again, this is discussions with Meryl. She was sort of advising me on, what to do if you do overheat. And something that I was kind of keeping in mind throughout the race was if that was to happen, just slow it right, like really slow down. Try and cool your arms and your legs, and even try and get like water over your head. Sometimes if I'm too hot, I'll like get my buff and absolutely soak it and then put it on my head, and that's just kind of like keeping your head cool at all times. But yeah, Meryl's good advice was just slow it right down and try and cool both arms and legs. She also said try and like breathe through your nose and then out through your mouth, and that air going through your nose will then cool as it goes out your mouth. But I didn't encounter any of that because we were fortunate with the weather in the first half, and then the second half it was rain and wind, so opposite of what I was kind of planning for.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that Scotland, you don't know where you're getting.
Definitely. I mean, I guess the
Kit?
what was
Mandatory
that?
kit? Did you have mandatory kit to carry?
Yeah, mandatory kit. So it was just basically, your usual ultra kit. So full body waterproofs, However, your crew could carry those, but after Glencoe, or was it possibly checkpoint before that, it was mandatory. We
Carry it yourself.
had to have those airbag, just because the weather turned. Foil blanket, whistle, compass, basic first aid in my hydration pack, and then Claire and Dave had a bigger one in the van as well with them.
Yeah.
And then obviously enough fuel and water to keep you going. But I guess I was just about to say, like, for you, obviously, last one standing, the beauty of that is you've got a sort of base point that you're going to be passing every 45 minutes to an hour or however long you're planning on doing your loops. So that is ideal in terms of, if shit hits the fan with the weather, for example, you're maybe only 20 minutes away to your next point to then change and so on.
And I think that's the same with like toilet, it's the same with food, it's the same with, it's quite a safe environment to kind of do this quest for distance, I guess, would be.
Yeah.
Because it like same with like the Salter 24, you were always 20 minutes away from being safe and warm.
Yeah.
The
Did you encounter any problems on the Saltire 24 at all? I obviously spoke to you briefly when I saw you there.
It's a wee bit funny, but it was the waiting for the laps to finish, because you're not running, you're running every 4, so you kind of sometimes have 2 hours in between. I thought that was more of an issue, and you're walking about in between, you're catching up with people, you're still dotting about rather than being off feet. And Dave was actually there. Oh no, I don't know how to upgrade. I have to stop and start again. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, it might cut out because it's got to upgrade the Zoom thing. But yeah, we'll just start up again. But yeah, so yeah, the waiting for the laps to finish. You're on feet, and Dave was there, and he was saying, if I were you, I'd just be sitting. Don't be floating about. Don't be checking in with people. Just get and sit. As soon as you finish your lap, sit down so that you're off your feet and you're not wasting like energy and stuff like that. So I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. So I try to do a lot better at that. But do you know what? The thing about Saltire was it was tiredness. Okay. And I think that was more that if you were continually running, I don't think you'd have been sitting down in a warm van waiting for the lap to finish and then just falling asleep. So I think the fueling went really well, the shoes went really well, equipment went really well. The course was pretty much, I think, 15 metres to 20 metres less elevation than what Blair Atha would be. So the kind of elevation was much and such the same.
Okay.
The times for the laps are going to be much and such the same, if not a wee bit quicker. I guess the only problem was that you can't manage a team of 4.
Yeah.
The problems that I had there probably wouldn't be the same problems as I have at the last one standing. But at the same time, it's quite nice to run at night, to have the fuel, to try out some of the food that you're going to have, to change kit. How long is it going to take to change kit? I started like timing things. So even though I had 2 hours, I would time how long it takes me to change my kit. So I knew roughly how long that would take me if I had to do that on the day. How long would it take me to eat a pot noodle? How long does it take for me to drink some Coke? All the small things, time how long it takes you to take a gel. And there's another thing that Dawn said is like, however long you think it is in your head, it's probably about a third of the time. So if you think it takes 3 minutes to take a gel, it's probably about 30 to 40 seconds. It just seems like it takes forever. Yeah. But it's probably not. And that was quite a cool thing.
Yeah.
So,
and have you decided, like, are you going to break it down at all? Because this is something I thought about sort of again pre-race is, right, how am I going to break this race down rather than look at it as a whole? I quite like breaking races down, whether it's breaking into 10Ks or 20Ks or, so I was trying to work out, well, it's quite a lot of 10Ks to break into.
Yeah.
Someone said, oh, it's 31 park runs, but even that, I was thinking it's quite a lot of park runs. So for me, I broke it into checkpoints and that worked a treat. And rather than, again, just focusing on like the whole thing as a chunk, I just would focus on, right, I'm starting at 1 a.m. My next point, I need to get to Balmaha at sort of 4:30. Focus on that chunk. Once I was there, and then focus on the next chunk. And that really worked quite well, was just breaking it down into sort of 8 chunks, if you like.
Well, I guess it naturally breaks down into a loop.
Yeah.
within the loop, it's broken down at like 4 miles. So like it's a lot. It's a lot of different points you can have on there, so it can be broken down into numerous things. But a lot of the guys have said not to think past the loop you're in. The loop you're in the next one, what you need to do to prepare for the next one, and then try not to think about is distance, because you start like maybe drifting away from what the goal is or what the end goal is going to be.
Yeah, 100%.
I've always thought of it as 100 mile, but both Dave are saying, well, if you give yourself 100 miles, you'll do 100 miles. You won't do any more. And the point of the whole thing is to do or go until you can't run anymore. And that's always been the kind of purpose behind it, is to run as far as you can for as long as you can. In the lap, it was something I picked up from Jen and Fiona, who did the West Highland Way as well. And they were saying that try and find little little markers on the course. So within the first kilometre, there's a lake, then there's a little knoll at the side called Knoll Gallagher, and then there's a tree, it looks like Darth Vader, and then there's
that's brilliant.
Thing. So at least you know, okay, all I've got to do is get to the lake, then I've got to get to the knoll, then I've got to get the Darth Vader, then I've got to get to the turn, then I'm going to walk to the tree, then I'm going to go to the, it's like breaking it down into the small sections. And I guess thinking about the 24 hours or thinking about 24 hours beyond just makes it so much bigger. It's easier to eat a cheesecake bite by bite than it is to eat a cheesecake when you look at the whole thing sitting in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think it as well, it just makes you enjoy the journey, if you like, a bit more.
Yeah.
If you can break it down, well, for me, that I definitely, the first half, it kind of made me enjoy the likes of, the scenery, the lochside, and because a lot of people said, the second half of the lochside's really technical, and it was very technical, and I hadn't run it before, but because I was just breaking it into checkpoints, I only had about 10k to my next checkpoint on the lochside, so I just decided to enjoy, everything around me.
Yeah, but I think as well that if you're going through peaks and troughs, the more like, oh well, it's going to be a nightmare till I get to this next checkpoint, and then I can do something about it. So you kind of have an end point to your heart, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like, for example, if you're going through a bit of a tough time, and you can think, well, okay, all I've got to do is get to the 4K, or all I've got to do is get around this lap, and then if it's my shoes that are rubbing, I can change them, or if it's this that's going wrong, I can do that, or if I just need to sit down, I can do it then. So it's kind of like, if you break it down into smaller sections, at least you've only got a certain amount of time. It's the same when it's feeling good. I guess if you've got like checkpoints in your head, you're thinking, okay, I want to feel good until such and such a point. You've got no real control over it, but at least if you know that there's a checkpoint, you want to try and keep going or keep doing the right things.
Yeah.
When you're in the flow, you're in the flow.
Another thing as well, like, again, this is just a discussion I had with Meryl beforehand, but we were sort of saying that don't evaluate the race in the race, do all the evaluations afterwards. That's something I used to be quite bad of. Like, if I was racing, I'd be constantly looking at my watch, like, I'm not going the pace I should be going, or I'm not doing what I should be doing, and constantly evaluating the race, which then takes enjoyment out of it a little bit. So I really tried hard on the West Highland Way just to sort of stay in the present. And anytime I found myself drifting away to start evaluating what I was doing or my pace or the time, I just would tell myself, no, stop. Evaluations are for after the race.
Yeah. I guess it's like that Counting Western song, you never count your money when you're sitting at the table.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And I think that's so true, because you can talk yourself out of doing some fantastic things if you do start evaluating.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point. I've written that one down.
Totally. I'm trying to think what else I've got that certainly helped me. My music, which thank you, by the way, for adding some songs to.
But I use it as well. Use that playlist as well. And there's some weird stuff in there.
Yeah, I know. I have some weird friends. No, again, I never ever listen to music on a race. I listen to it in training sometimes. I'm more like, listen to sort of podcasts and stuff, but I would probably be lost without that music playlist, to be honest. I listened to it for about 3/4 of the race.
Yeah.
And because a lot of it were, okay, don't get me wrong, the songs, a lot of them are weird, like you say, but it brought back memories. So
Yeah,
a weird song would come on, and I knew straight away without even looking, oh, so
I
and
know
so's
this
added
is
this
from.
song, and
Yeah,
it brought back, like a fun memory with them, which again then gets you thinking about that memory with them, and it passes time, and it was just a great thing to have on the race.
yeah, no, absolutely. And when you look down through the songs, you look at them, and you think there must be a meaning behind that one. There's
Yeah.
no way that song would be put in there without that. And like some of them, you actually listen to, you think that's actually quite good here. And you can click
Yeah.
on Spotify, you can click underneath it, you can go to their album. The next thing you're down this dark hole of listening to all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
No wonder you're hallucinating.
I know, songs like that.
But no, I
No,
I tend to use music, but I tend to like go as far as I can without needing it, and
okay.
then like use it. And there's certain like things or songs that you have, like a playlist to make you happy, a playlist to like get you up for like moving a bit quicker.
Yeah,
But it's quite nice having that complete mix where you don't know what's coming next, and you're like, oh,
totally.
that'll take me through the next 5 minutes, and then the next thing
Yeah.
comes. Oh, before you know it, you're half an hour further down the line than what you were.
Yeah. I went through the night with no music because again, that was part of my sort of sleepy time. I wouldn't have music if I'm sleeping. So I had no music until I think about roughly the 50K mark, maybe a wee bit before. And then I had music on and off throughout the race from then on.
It's quite a good point. The no music in sleep time. Yeah, we're probably going to cut off in less than a minute, but then what I'll do is I'll just send you another code and we can just carry on if that's okay to do. And we'll
Yeah,
just
no, that's cool. Yeah, I can see a
away.
sign that says less than a minute. That's
I
fine.
stopped paying for my premium after we went back in the clinic. Got cheapskate.
Don't worry. I'm just having a wee look through my list to I
No,
mean,
it's
I've
great.
done again, that was just part of that was just part of my sort of strategy. Um, I wouldn't normally have music on through the night, so I just told myself, try and go as long as possible without it. But I found when I got sort of sunrise point, when I had my breakfast, I then allowed myself, right, I'll take my headphones, but I didn't switch my music on until about the sort of 50K mark, and then I had it on and off until the end of the race, basically. My headphones, I actually borrowed a pair of aftershock headphones from Emma Murray, which was really nice of her to give me them. I usually wear like big bulky headphones. That's just what I'm used to. I love my bulky headphones. So that obviously wasn't suitable for a race. So Emma kindly lent me hers. But I used up all the battery life in it. So like 7 hours or whatever into that music, the battery went on those. But Claire thankfully had a backup pair. So I then took on her pair for the rest of the race. But yeah, it was like on and off music until the very end, basically.
So here's one for you. During sleepy time, and probably I'm not sure if the question maybe answers itself. Is it so? One of my tasks is to try and keep myself awake to take caffeine, but also I wouldn't take caffeine when I'm sleeping. So what did you do, or did you try and do anything to keep you from falling asleep, or did you feel like you were falling asleep, or if you did, what would the strategy be then?
So I didn't, bizarrely enough, I didn't feel tired at all through the night. There was not one part of the night where I felt tired, but I guess, the race was starting at 1 a.m. I was nervous as hell. My adrenaline was going, and that I'm assuming just sort of kept me going through the night. I did actually ask for a coffee with my porridge, with my breakfast, but I never got it. So not sure why Claire and Dave didn't give me that. But I noticed I think there was maybe twice I asked for coffee and they didn't give me it. So I actually had no coffee throughout the whole race. They
Wow.
were maybe worried that I would have stomach issues, and yeah, that's possibly why. And because they were going to give me that do you know the like coffee strips that you just put on your either your tongue or below your tongue?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is it ease
And
or
I
something?
can't I can't remember what they're called. I actually did have them on the 50 miler, but they were going to give me that on the race, but because they didn't know if I'd had it before, they thought they better not. So I'm assuming that's maybe why I didn't get the coffee. I've never actually brought it up with them why I never got my coffee. So yeah, through the night I didn't feel tired. So it wasn't until the Saturday evening, so I would now be about well towards the end of my race, that I started feeling really, really tired. Like I remember running up the hill, my eyes kind of going, and I actually thought to myself, I could just run while sleeping right now. And to be honest, I didn't, in terms of like drinking coffee and stuff, well, I didn't have any. I ate food at that point though. Claire and Dave basically stuffed my pack with easy foods to eat: sausage rolls, Mars bars, chocolate rice cakes, sodium bar. I think I had a slice of pizza in there. Now, I didn't eat all that, but they basically said try and eat as much as you can in this last chunk. And that bit of food that I did manage to have, so I think I managed the sausage roll, the Mars bar, and half a bit of the wee slice of pizza. And that was kind of enough to give me a bit of a boost.
Yeah.
Also knowing that,
Metabolism a bit, and the same kind of thing as what the caffeine does as well.
yeah, totally. Also knowing as well, again, it's slightly different for you because you don't know how long you're going to go on for. I mean, you could go on for miles and miles and miles, but I knew, right, I'm getting closer to this finish line. My family's there, and again, it's just like an extra buzz to kind of keep me going and keep me awake and perk me up a little bit.
I think that's a big thing with point to points. Is you always got somewhere to go. Similar like the Mori 50, it was like, well, I know that we need to get to the end point because otherwise I can't go home. So I need to keep on running towards.
Yeah.
And there's always that kind of finish line. But I guess with this thing, there's not really a finish line until you actually, well, you never hit the finish line because if you DNF, then you don't actually cross the line. So yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's super exciting though, because it's like, right, where's my body going to take me? Like that's when you'll probably delve deep into like sort of mental battles. But I quite like having that game with your mind of, there's one part of your mind telling you to stop and oh, you can't do this and you can't. But then the other part, you're pushing through that. And I always just think it's making you a stronger person.
Yeah.
And something that stuck with me actually for the last chunk, and I kept telling myself this, was I don't know if you've read or listened to the David Goggins "You Can't Hurt Me."
Yeah.
And he always says that you think you're done, but you're not. You're actually only 40%, and you've still got 60%. And I kept telling myself that. And don't get me wrong, there was times where even though I was telling myself that, I was still like not going any faster. But certainly on the last, I think it was about the last 5 miles or 6 miles of the race, I just told myself that constantly, sort of every minute I was saying it out loud. And I really picked up the pace. And then on the final, it was just over half a kilometre, I think, Dave actually ran up to come and get me. And he said, right, Chloe, if you want to make your A goal, you've got 4 minutes to make it. So basically get moving. And all of a sudden I just managed to I'd gone from
so
mega
after 96 miles,
I was literally
4 minutes and you just like burst a gut. It's crazy.
I'd gone from like trailing my legs, going downhill, my quads getting thrashed and just like feeling the pain right at my legs, to then being like, right, I've got 4 minutes to get this shit done. And I just went for it. And it just goes to show though, like you're not done. Even though you may think you are, you're not.
And watching you cross that line, it just looked like you just finished a nice casual run. The way you just like crossed the line, just chilled. That was it.
Didn't feel like it.
Dip your dog.
But yeah, I guess I know it's obviously different for last man standing because you don't know when that finishing point is. But I think the best sort of thing I could say is just keep telling your body that no, you can do this and you will do it.
Yeah.
Regardless of the voices in your head saying, "Oh, just stop," or "You've done enough." I can guarantee you'll get a lot more out of your body than you think you will.
And it's kind of thinking about it that I've already said to myself, although I don't have a goal for distance or time, I've always said to myself, I want to get timed out rather than not start. So I want to start every lap. And the way the route is, you're probably not going to go out and then come back because you get along a flat bit, then you go up a hill, and once you got the hill, you'd be as well just come down the hill. So in my head, I'm thinking at least start every lap. And if you have to time out by not finishing the lap, then that's fine. But you're not going to sit in the tent and wait for the start and not go out and join the start line. So you've got to start every lap that you're there for. So yeah, it's just something completely new. It's exciting. Totally excited about it. I was watching Dave Scott up at Orkney over the weekend doing the last one up there, and I think he went to 26 or 27 laps.
Wow.
And he was so cheery, so cheery, so cheery. Then all of a sudden at the end, he was just like, yeah. So yeah, it'll be exciting.
Yeah, no, you should be. It is. It's well, that's something I've never experienced before. Like, yeah, I'm actually hoping to come down and maybe watch if I
Ah,
can.
nice.
Um, but yeah, I just think it's a chance to push your limits and see how far you can go. And yeah, I've got no doubt that you'll go far. But I think there's definitely highs and lows to it all, and that's probably well, it is the first time that I've experienced that to that extreme. Don't get me wrong, I look back and think it was an absolutely amazing experience. Like it really, I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that before.
Have you had time
Um,
for it to sit in?
what was that?
Have you had a chance to let it sit in or let it actually sink in
Probably
what you did?
Probably not fully. I was basically straight back to work, so I've not even had a debrief with Meryl yet, or
Yeah.
like or Claire and Dave. Like we've not had a chance to actually properly meet up and go through the race. This is actually the first sort of discussion I've had about it. I've written like all my sort of race debrief down, so yeah, I guess in a way I have, but in a way I haven't. Because I've been working.
Yeah. I think that
But
when you have that conversation with Meryl, a lot more of it will come out because obviously
totally.
Meryl asks the right questions. She'll have the experience to kind of like tease more information, stuff that you probably haven't written down, and you'll just be like, oh yeah, that did happen. So that'll be an
Yeah.
exciting, and it's quite nice to relive it, like
Yeah,
with a
no,
cup of tea
definitely.
or with with a bottle
Yeah,
of juice or something like that, rather than actually relive it being on the course itself.
yeah. I would say as well, like, something I probably did differently prior to the race was you mentioned it earlier, but like I ate a lot through the whole week. So not just on race day. I probably started carving up maybe like the Tuesday. Now the race wasn't until Saturday 1 a.m. I don't eat that much carbs anyway, so like I'm not totally no carbs, but I have quite a low carb diet as it is. So for me, I took on quite a lot of carbs than what I was used to. But that has been working quite well in terms of races. That the week leading up to a race, if I just carb up more than normal, I seem to cope okay with it in terms of my stomach. So I did that up until Friday. And then on Friday, I basically had two dinners as well. So I had dinner at like four o'clock in the afternoon. I picked Dave and Claire up at 5:30, and then we went out for dinner at like half seven, eight. And I kept it basic, so it was just like macaroni, cheese, and stuff that I knew that
Was
wouldn't
it Friday
affect my
night it
stomach.
started, Chloe?
What was that?
Was it Friday night or was it Saturday night at one that
So,
it started? Okay,
Saturday
Saturday.
1 a.m. in the
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
And then I had more food again at like sort of quarter to 12 at night. So like just over an hour before the race, I had a jam sandwich. So I would say like, if your stomach can handle it, then definitely sort of carb up beforehand, even like the week leading up to it.
Yeah, yeah, and hydrate as well with
Yeah,
keep
because
drinking.
that definitely, I think, especially because I struggled to eat, over the last part of it, because I had quite a bit of fuel in me prior, I think it definitely did help. Now that's maybe more in the mind, but for me, well, it did. It ended up. I managed to keep going, so I think it did help.
No, great. No, I mean the other question I had was footwear. What shoes did you wear?
So I wore my Ultra Olympus 4. Um, Now I've trialed so many different pairs of running shoes, as I'm sure you have as well, but I always go back to my Ultras. I've got quite wide feet, so they are a wider fitting shoe, the Olympus 4, and they're just super comfy. And for me, if you're running a long distance, like comfort, they've got to be comfy shoes. They're also great on the trail. Like I fully trust them. I think you've got to trust your shoe on the trail. Um, Especially there was a chunk of that route, well, for me anyway, felt quite technical. I'm sure to maybe like more advanced runners it wasn't, but especially the lock side, it was very technical towards the second half of the lock. And then obviously the climbs towards the end of the race. So I needed a shoe that was comfortable, that would hopefully last the whole race, and that were also sort of trustworthy on the technical parts. And for me, that was the Ultras. I trialed a few other shoes beforehand, and they weren't working for me. So I stuck with those, and I didn't have to change them at all throughout the race.
Brilliant, brilliant. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that that was partly funded by the Chris Smith Memorial Fund, and also Chris
Yeah.
was obviously quite close to your partner Stephen, and it was quite a nice thing when I saw that came up that there was a link there from the Memorial
Yeah,
Fund.
no, and I have mentioned it already on social media, but totally grateful for that fund. It's so generous of them to sort of give me those shoes for the race. And it makes it even more special, like you say. It's a sort of charity close to our hearts. With Steve being, he was really good pals with Chris himself. So yeah, no, super grateful for that, and I'm hoping that I can sort of help them out someday.
No, brilliant. Well, I think that's kind of covered all my questions, unless there's anything glaring that you want to add in, Chloe. But absolutely fantastic. I'm going to do a wee summary. Processes that you can control was one of the things you mentioned. Start slow, go easy, and if it feels easy, go easier. Sleepy time, quite a nice one as well. Thinking about when you're meant to be sleeping, let the body just chill out. And I've also written
Yeah.
a side note there of like meditation or just like let the body relax. Try and reduce the music during that times itself.
Yeah.
Eat roughly the same kind of times as when you were eating normally. So breakfast at breakfast time, lunch at lunch time, and sandwiches pretty much in the lead up to the start of the race as well.
Yeah.
Gels, you mentioned that you would change it from being early on in the race to more later in the race itself. So that's something I've written down there, but also the mashed potatoes with the butter and milk. That was
Yeah.
underlined there.
And pizza. Don't forget
Pizza,
pizza.
pizza. Um, I've also written down here the don't dwell, don't evaluate during the race,
Yeah.
don't count your money when you're at the table.
Yeah.
Music, have some music that means something to you, so that when it comes on, it means a little bit more to you. And it brings back memories, and it can actually pass the time a little bit more. Um, the overheating, slow down, cool arms and legs, buff for the head. So really cool in the proximities.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd written down was cool the air through your nose and also breathe out through your mouth as well. And the last bit I've done again is sleep time. I've done that twice, sleep time twice.
Same time. It worked for me, but I mean, also as well, everyone's different, and different things work for different people. Now, like I say, Meryl gave me some great advice. A lot of it worked, some of it didn't, but where everyone's different, and you'll find that something that maybe works great for somebody won't work for you.
Yeah.
But like from what I've seen anyway, you have prepped very, very well for this race. So, I think you stand in great sort of prep for it, because you've done a lot from
It's
what I've
quite
seen.
it's quite interesting as well because I think yourself and me kind of went into the ultra like distances at the same time. And there's
Yeah,
a few races that we've kind of done together, and it's been great, like watching your journey and like me having a completely different journey, but at the same time, equally having such a great time just experiencing and learning, but also meeting some
totally.
great people. And people always say to me when they do their first ultras, like, "Oh, it's such a nice community," and it is such a great community.
Yeah,
A lot of people that have reached out, even like I've never met before, and they're reaching out over some of the videos I put up about Last One Standing has been great. And it's such a nice experience because I'm used to like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but sometimes the 5 and the 10K races and the half marathon races, it's about time. But I
yeah,
think that the ultra side of things is about the experience. And I think that sounds really quite Clinton Card-esque, but at the same time, it's an enjoyable experience rather than
totally.
if you don't get your time in a 5K, that's pretty much the only thing that determines it. Whereas
Yeah,
during the ultra, there's so many things you've got to think about and plan for, and
yeah,
the planning side of things is so much fun as well. So yeah, long may our journey
yeah.
continue.
I know.
Said that, where's next for your journey?
Um, so I've had a week off, which not coping well with. No, like as you know, I think when running becomes sort of part of your daily habits, well, it certainly has for me, and as it looks like it has for you as well, it then becomes hard to take a bit of a break from it. But it has been good in terms of the body's needed a rest. So I have done that. I've listened to Meryl and I have rested. However, I was quite keen to get things sort of in the diary. I made a conscious effort this year to not plan too much. Last year, I made the mistake of doing too many races in a short space of time. And I just found by Benahi Ultra last year, I felt just drained, is the best way to describe it. So I focused on West Highland Way. Now that is out the way, I think I'm going to do Ring of Steel.
Oh yeah, in for that one as well.
Are you in for that as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
In Jordan as
Yes.
well, young Jordan.
So, well, we're gonna I think Meryl and I are gonna go up and wreck it. So you and Jordan are more than welcome to come up with us.
Absolutely. After
And
the 23rd of July.
yes. So yeah, that's my next sort of bigger race. And between that, I'm gonna now I think focus on sort of shorter stuff. Maybe do some of the Highland Games hill races. I did those a couple of years ago and they're a lot of fun and just
Yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that again, it's a different thing. The Highland Game of Hill runs. There's just a different atmosphere to them as well.
Yeah.
And I think people are saying, "Oh, when are you going back to doing 10Ks or 5Ks?" I'm not in any rush to do it.
No.
Just like
No.
I love like being out in the trails, being in the hills, and just
Yeah.
doing something different. And it's
Yeah,
so
definitely.
fun.
Would you do West Highland Way?
Um, I loved the Moray Coastal one, and I think that if I was going to do one, I might do the 100,
Yeah.
Kyle's 100. But I think with the West Highland Way, I've not done enough hill like elevation or scramble stuff, so I think I'd probably want to get a few more um like hillier runs under my belt first. But yeah, definitely, it's always a goal. I mean,
Yeah.
to
I
achieve that
would
would be just fantastic. And
I would recommend it. Like 100. I think people listening to us, well, certainly my close friends will laugh at me saying that because they will probably think they'll be thinking, you wouldn't have said that after you finished the race. I basically said never again. But looking back, now I've had time to recover from it. It was just the best experience. So I would definitely recommend it.
but I think that's the thing as well, is that what's the famous saying? Don't take anything I say when I'm hungry, sleepy, or when I finish a race for granted, because it's
100%.
going to be a lie.
Yeah. Totally. No, that is so true. I think, yeah, like at least 2, 3 days after the race, I was saying never again. It was a great experience, but it's far too long and I was broken, this, that, and the next thing. But now I'm recovered. I just look back and think, God, that was
You know what?
amazing.
The body's great because it doesn't remember how sore you are. It remembers that,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I remember I was in pain, but I can't actually put a feeling on that pain. You know,
Yeah.
it's sore. It's the same with like, I believe, not come from experience, but like pregnancy as well. Like you
Mhm.
don't remember how sore it was because otherwise we wouldn't then go back for second or third.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's quite
It's true.
interesting. In ultra, I'm not comparing ultra to having a kid, but at the same time, it's like as soon as you finish, you're like, oh, that was awful. See, a day later, you're like, what's next? And it's like
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
a weird experience to like, you're
That
lying
is
there,
something I
you can't walk to the toilet, and you're like, when am I getting on the hills again?
yeah. That's something I kept reminding myself is pain is only temporary, Chloe, And again, it was just a little saying in my head that, well, it got me to the finish line, or at least helped anyway.
What you're feeling just now won't last. It's
Yeah,
the feeling of completing that race that will last.
totally. And it's the same with the bad phases that, sort of the lows that you may go through on a long race is they don't last. So
Yeah.
just keep pushing through them.
And that's where the small goals come in, like the small distance markers. I'm feeling awful, but I just need to get to the next stone, or I just
Yeah,
need to get to the next hill. I just need to get to the
definitely.
next bit, and just like that 40% rule, you're not done until you're done, until
Yeah.
you're actually not able to move. So yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. I can't thank you enough for your time,
Oh
Claire. I
no,
really appreciate that. And
not at all. And good
um,
luck. I mean, like I say, I'm hoping to come down and support,
yeah,
but if I don't, then best of luck. I cannot
yeah, no,
wait to see how you
absolutely.
do.
And if you are down there and I'm in Adwam, remember remind me about sleepy time.
I will. Don't you worry.
What I'll do is I'll just
Thank
pause
you.
the recording and we'll just catch up just off air. That's good. So I'll just end now. Thank you very much.